Hi, my name is Tadek. I'm going to be going to Japan this spring with my wife, and I thought it would be a good idea to learn a little bit of Japanese before heading out there. So I started with the hiragana alphabet, I suppose. Basically, just a way of sounding out certain words. Uh, so here are some mnemonics that I use to remember the individual characters. We'll start with a, I, U, E, O, and then the corresponding consonants with paired up with them going down the columns. So for a or a, it's a T with a kind of a knot on the end. Uh, my drawings aren't the best. I'm using a mouse right now, but I remember this one because it looks a bit as if there's a lowercase a plus, how would that work? An uppercase A right there, and a T. So there's two A's. These are all a bit convoluted, so you have to kind of suspension of disbelief, or, you know, kind of give me the benefit of the doubt here. So I, it's kind of like that, and I just remember it as being like a broken up I. It's a bit like that, two lines. The third one, U. This one's kind of strange, but as you'll learn with some of the other characters that have an U sound, they'll have a sideways curved character here, like tsu or nu. So U, just kind of like a U on its side. Then E looks a bit like a Z. And I just remember that it's E, Z, to remember the letter E, easy. So the last vowel is going to be O, and you'll see this in the beginning of more formal sentences or an honorific, like somebody's name or something like that. They'll put O in front of it and then two characters behind it, depending on what it is. I think if it's an object or a person, it's different. But basically, yeah, so O, I remember kind of like it's got the T, and then on the left it has an O and almost an O on that side, kind of going like that. So tu, U, O. So that's it for the vowels. And the first series is going to be the K series, and the first character is ka. So for ka, it's a slightly slanted line like that, and then kind of a arched one like that and that. I used to watch Dragon Ball Z back in the day when I was younger, and they had a fighting move called the Kamehameha. So this one was a little easier for me to remember, but I guess as far as mnemonics, I would just kind of picture it as a guy kicking a can of soda. So, guy kicking a can of Coca-Cola, as I wrote there. So the second one here, it's key. This is probably the first really intuitive and easy and least convoluted one. It really just looks like a skeleton key to me. So key, skeleton key, easy to remember. Ku, it looks a bit like a bird beak. So like a bird beak from a cuckoo clock. Ke, this one was a little more difficult for me because it just looks like the letters I and T, and I don't know how the heck you would get K from that unless you got really creative, you know? So what I remember is that in the book Pennywise, he kills everything or everyone. K-E, K. It kills everyone. So there's it for that one. And Ko, I remember by picturing a square and two lines co-inhabiting the square. And all of these are pretty much written in an imaginary box. So you kind of want to write them so as to sort of fill out that box. So down here you'll notice that there's a similar set of characters to the top row, but they have two dashes. And that's the 10-10. And the 10-10, at least I kind of gathered that it makes the sound softer. So you have ko, and it would be go. Ko, go. So, zo. To, do. Ho, bo, po. So for here, it's identical to the upper row, just with the 10/10s, and then change K to G. Real easy. The third row, S series, you have sa, sa. And I remember this one because it looks like somebody having a bad day. So it looks a bit like somebody's face and their big crying mouth, a little teardrop, and their nose there. They're crying because they got a weird nose, maybe only one tooth. But yeah, so it looks a bit like a face that's sad. Sa, sad. So that one's a little easier for me to remember. She, there's a couple ways I remember this, but one is that it's a lady, and she has wavy hair. She. The other one is sushi. Sushi is caught on a hook. So you have a hook that'll catch the fish. Sushi. She. Oop. Okay. Oh, dope. The third one here, Sue, I remember because it looks a bit, Sue, to me looks a bit like the symbol that the artist formerly known as Prince had over here. So I kind of draw it like that. That's pretty terrible, but it just looks kind of like a gender symbol, and it reminds me a bit of that song A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash. So that's how I remember it. What did I do? Oh, oh no, I thought I skipped one. Okay. So, Sue, and we have se. This one, it looks kind of like a slack-jawed person saying se to me, but the other way you could remember is it's a set of T's, or J's, or L and L, and a set of curved letters, se. And for so, this one's a little more difficult. It might be easier just to remember the 10/10 version of it, which is zo. Where is it? Zo. Because it almost looks a bit like a Z and an O with a line, almost like a fraction. So, like that. I wrote like a face singing a song. I think I was at a loss with this one, so I just took something from a website. Again, the lower column is going to be similar to the top, with one exception. She goes, instead of being Z or Z or whatever, it's going to be G or G. But it follows the same rule as far as just having a 10/10 added to it. But the pronunciation isn't in line with the other ones, but all the other four are basically the same as the top. For the fourth column is the T series, and we have ta. And this one basically just looks like if you're kind of quickly or haphazardly writing T and A. So ta. Okay. So for chi, this one basically just looks like a 5. Well, I kind of drew that incorrectly, but it looks like a 5. And the counting the first few numbers in Japanese is, I think, ichi, ni, san, and shi, or shy, like Shy Town. And 5 is go. So I remember like Shy Town, chai, ka, go, except it's one off. So it's close. It's kind of convoluted. This one's pretty convoluted, but it really helped me remember it. So the third one in this row is going to be tsu, which is probably something you've heard quite a bit if you hear Japanese people talking. Tsu, this one is TSU, turned sideways U, a lot like the just plain vowel, u, but without the little accent on the top. Also, it looks a bit like if you had a tsunami wave, the basic shape is there, so you can remember it tsunami or tsu. turn sideways U. Te reminds me a bit of if you had a T and an E, and then the E crashed into the T, and you just have the T left over after that. So this is te. And toe looks a bit like if you were wearing socks with sandals. Little kind of camel toe thing going on there. Socks with sandals. And toes in socks in sandals. So for the 10-10 series, the D series, it's similar to the top, except you have two exceptions on this one. The first exception, is chi, turns into G, pretty much the same thing as that. And tsu is zu. Again, following the same rules. It's the upper symbol plus the 10-10. This is way too long, but plus the 10-10. Okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth row is the H row. And this one kind of goes out with a bang because it's got a 10-10 and a Maru row, B and P series, and then the rest don't really have anything. So the first one's going to be ha, and this looks a bit like if you were writing it sideways, it would look a little... Oh, you know what? Actually, this one's not sideways, so this one would look a bit like if you wrote it sloppily, like you were writing ha. So you have this here, the line, and then the line going through. So if you use your imagination, it kind of looks a bit like H-A. It probably works a lot better if you write it by hand. Hi, or he, is kind of a upside down, sideways omega. And I remember the face of someone that is high, but the probably better one would just be he. He has a goofy smile. See? He's like, bleh. He has a goofy smile. This one's pretty unique, so it's a little easier to remember. Fu, or who, I think if you draw it a certain way, it's kind of like that. And then you have this one and this one. It reminds me a bit of a face. And he's got mustache whiskers. Or a Fu Manchu mustache or facial hair. The other one also could be hula dancer. Just kind of looks a little wavy. It's got, the hula grass here, and then the lady's hair. She's doing a hula dance. So again, a lot of these are pretty convoluted, but they help me remember. He, spelled he. It looks just a bit like, I don't know, an athletic cup or something to me. It's a mound, some kind of lump. Ho, this is the one that's sideways. Oopsie. Ho looks a bit like if you wrote ho sideways. So you have the line here, this guy going down here, and then two H, ho. All right. What is this? The sixth row? The M. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over the accented one. So these are identical to the top row, except the Maru is the B series. Ba, beat, boop, bet, bo. And the 10-10 is the B series. And the Maru, the little, almost looks like a centigrade or Celsius. And you have the temperature symbol there. This is for the P series, pa, pi, pu, pet, po. So don't really need to go through that. Pretty easy to remember. And you have the M series. So for this one, a man with many arms. Man with many arms. This one too, I think there's a phrase or something called ma, which is like so, ma, and then you just double it up. Ma. It means things are so, or it's when you want to kind of say you were having a rough day, but don't want to come right out and say it. This one, kind of easy. It looks a bit like, for me, it looks a bit like 21. So you can say, yes, me, I'm 21. For moo, this is probably the easiest one and one of the first ones I remembered. This is really bad, but it looks a bit like a steer or a cow. Horns, the face and body, and then you have a little tail here. So moo looks like a cow. Meh looks like, if you draw it a little creatively, again, a lot of these work better if you draw them by hand as opposed to seeing it written or typed. Looks a little bit like an eye. So the eye is looking at meh. And then this one is another really easy one, much like ki. Mo looks like a fish hook. You catch mo fish with a bigger hook. Mo. So now we have the N series. For this one, this is pretty convoluted. It looks a bit like a guy and another guy. And this guy had a hat, but this guy knocked it off. He says, "Do you like my hat?" And this guy goes, "Nah," and hits it. Knocks it off his head. That's how I remember nah. Knee. This one's pretty easy. It just looks like a bit like if you're going to draw somebody's knee. You get the shin here, the calf, a little dimple. Looks like somebody's knee. So you break it down like that. Knee looks like a knee. Nu and ne. I remember this because it's two tie a, two thread a. So two tie a nu, a noose. This one's loose. The overall design of it looks a bit more loose. It's not, the edges aren't as tight. So nu, two tie a noose, and ne. This one you kind of have to say it more in English. Ni, needle. To thread a needle. So this is a needle and it's kind of going through. To thread a needle. So nu, ne. And then we have no, which basically just looks like a no symbol or an anti symbol, like Ghostbusters. So no looks like that. Then we have an odd one out, which is n or n, and it just looks like a fancy N. So we have the R series here. We have Ra. This one's not so hard. It looks a bit like a rabbit head, so you could kind of use your imagination here. Little bunny, that little teeth. You got a bunny head here. So Ra looks like a rabbit, a happy rabbit. Ra, rabbit. Next we have re, and I think of this one kind of like you goofed up and you're redrawing the line. So you meant to draw it like this, but you drew it like this initially, so you redraw the line. Re. Ru. I find this one's a little easier because if you already know ro, and I think of this one kind of like, it just reminds me of kind of strokes, rowing a boat, kind of almost like a boat. Here's the boat. It's breaking waves a bit, so it's rowing and they're breaking waves. Ru, it's like row. This is how I remember ru. It's like row, except you follow through ru over here at the end. This is supposed to having this open. So ru, it's a 180 degree R and a side U. So if you get really creative or you want to get really convoluted, it looks a little like ru. You get the little thing there. But yeah, I just think of it kind of, I remember this one through row. We have re. It looks a bit like knee, but instead of the cursive or the fancier 2, you have a cursive R. So we're going to go like this and then kind of like a cursive R. So we have this, boom, boom. There you go, re. So it's like knee, but you're replacing that with a R. Re. This one's one of the harder ones for me to remember because this is pretty convoluted and even I don't remember it. Again, we already mentioned row. It looks a bit like waves breaking or boat rowing. Yeah, this one's kind of cool because it looks a bit like a animal face. A little nose there. Well, his neck. It looks a bit like a giraffe, but I remember it looks like an animal head and like a yak. It's not really what a yak looks like, but yeah, yak. Animal head. You. I almost remember this one just for the sake, or just for the fact that it's so hard to remember. But it looks a little like a Y, and then your classic sideways U. So Y, I'm sorry, Y and U, and because all the U's are sideways in this for some reason. So U, and then little line there. Yo, I remember by it looks like a few of the other symbols like ma or parts of ha, ho. It's got that kind of fancy too with the line, except this one is so cool that he's only got one hand sticking up. He doesn't even have to try hard. He doesn't need all the other arms. He just has one, and he's cool, and he says yo, because all the cool kids say yo. So, guy, one arm, he's not sweating it. He's only got one arm out. That's all he needs because he's cool, and he says yo. The last couple, the W series, wa. This one's probably one of my favorites just because it reminds me a bit of a whale. So we can draw the body of the whale here. And that's a bad whale. Happy whale. He's got his little fin and his tummy and his tail here. So wa looks a bit like a whale. Wa, whale, wa. And then the last one is wo, or sometimes it's just o. Wo, I remember because it looks like there's a hole over here, and you have somebody who almost stepped in it, and right at the last second, they jumped out of the way. So they're jumping out of the way. So you've got basically a big hole. Oop, ran out of ink, fake ink. And then you've got a stick figure here jumping over the hole, going this way. Whoa. Whoa, a hole. So that's basically how I remember the hiragana. I hope you found my really convoluted mnemonics helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.